I stared at my phone, reading the message over and over, each word cutting deeper than the last. The blue text bubble glowed like a neon sign of rejection. You're not welcome at the birthday party. My wife doesn't want you here. My own son, my Robert. The little boy I'd nursed through pneumonia at age 6, staying awake for 3 straight nights. The teenager I'd worked double shifts for so he could attend that private school where he met his precious Vanessa. The man I'd given my house to as a wedding gift 5 years ago. My fingers trembled as I set the phone down on my kitchen table, the same oak table I'd brought to their house when I moved into the small guest apartment they'd generously allowed me to occupy in the converted garage. Outside the window, I could already see the delivery trucks arriving with supplies for my grandson Tyler's 7th birthday party, a party I was now banned from attending. In the 5 years since Robert married Vanessa, I'd watched my place in their lives shrink from mother to housekeeper to unwelcome burden. Last Thanksgiving, I'd been seated at the kids' table. At Christmas, my gifts to Tyler were accidentally left unopened. 2 months ago, Vanessa had reorganized the garage apartment while I was at my book club, throwing away photo albums I'd kept for 40 years. But this text, this was different. This was public humiliation. This was telling me I couldn't celebrate my own grandson's birthday. I picked up my tea, the liquid trembling like my hand. The party would start in 3 hours. 30 people would be here, filling this house with laughter and joy, eating cake in the backyard where I'd planted every flower and shrub with my own hands. And I would be sitting alone in this garage apartment, listening to the sounds of my family through the walls. The last time I felt this hollow was when Richard, my husband, died 15 years ago. Heart attack at 53. No warning. But even then, I had Robert. I had purpose. I had this house that Richard and I had worked so hard to pay off. This house. I set down my tea and walked to my filing cabinet. Second drawer, back folder. There it was. The property deed transfer I'd signed 5 years ago. The one the attorney had been so concerned about. Margaret, are you sure about this? He'd asked. The contingency clause gives you the right to revoke the transfer, but it's still... Robert is my son, I'd said. This is his wedding gift. I remembered how Vanessa had smiled when they received the keys, how she'd immediately started talking about renovations and upgrades, as if the home I'd kept immaculate for 30 years needed to be erased. I sat down at my computer, a gift from my sister in Chicago, and logged into my banking portal. 5 years ago, after transferring the house to Robert, I'd taken my retirement savings and, with my sister's guidance, made some investments. Careful ones at first, then bolder as I learned more. The hobby had turned into a passion, then a talent. My portfolio balance stared back at me. $1.2 million. No one knew. Not Robert, certainly not Vanessa, who complained about having to support me whenever I was within earshot. I printed the deed revocation forms, already prepared by my attorney months ago when Vanessa first suggested I move to a retirement home. I'd kept them just in case, never really believing I'd use them. Until today's text message. I signed my name with a steady hand, the hollowness inside me replaced with something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve, strength, the knowledge that sometimes love means standing up, not standing aside. I would not be attending Tyler's birthday party today, but very soon I would be hosting my own gathering, and the guest list would be entirely mine to decide. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone to call my attorney. Hey there, if you're enjoying Margaret's story so far, take a quick second to subscribe to our channel. Don't miss what happens next when this grandmother decides to take back what's rightfully hers. Now let's continue. My attorney, Diana Lawson, didn't sound surprised when I called. In fact, there was a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Margaret, I've been waiting for this call for 3 years, she said. I can file these documents Monday morning. The house will be back in your name by Wednesday. And they won't know until it's done? Not unless you tell them. It's a private transaction between you and the county recorder's office. Your son transferred the property with conditional ownership. You're simply exercising your legal right to reclaim it. I glanced out my window toward the main house. Balloons now decorated the front porch. Cars were beginning to line the driveway. I could hear children's laughter. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice although no one could hear me. I'd like to sell my stock portfolio, all of it. After hanging up, I changed into my gardening clothes. No one would question seeing me in the yard. Tending to those plants was the one contribution Vanessa still tolerated from me. As I knelt in the dirt, deadheading roses I'd planted 20 years ago, I watched guests arrive for the party I was banned from attending. My neighbor Elaine waved as she walked her grandson up the driveway. "Margaret, aren't you coming inside for the party?" I forced a smile. "Just finishing up some gardening first." Through the large bay windows, I could see Vanessa greeting guests, her perfect blonde hair bouncing as she laughed. Robert stood beside her, looking uncomfortable as he always did at these events. And there was Tyler, my sweet grandson, his face lighting up as he saw his friends arrive. I swallowed hard and turned back to my roses. That evening, after the party ended and the house grew quiet, I sat in my garage apartment making lists. My sister Patricia was flying in from Chicago tomorrow. My bank appointment was scheduled for Monday afternoon. Diana would file the property transfer first thing Monday morning. By Wednesday, everything would change. Sunday morning, I made breakfast as usual for Robert, Vanessa, and Tyler. Blueberry pancakes, Tyler's favorite. No one mentioned the party or my absence from it. Robert ate silently, avoiding my eyes. Vanessa scrolled through her phone, occasionally showing Robert properties she was listing that week. "Grandma, why weren't you at my party?" Tyler finally asked, his mouth full of pancake. The kitchen went silent. Robert stared at his plate. Vanessa's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. "Tyler, we talked about this," Vanessa said sharply. "Grandma wasn't feeling well." I set down the spatula and looked directly at my grandson. "I wanted to be there very much, sweetheart. I'm sorry I missed it. You can come to my next party," he said, with the beautiful simplicity of a 7-year-old. "Yes," I said, feeling the weight of Patricia's plane ticket in my pocket. "Things will be very different by your next party." Monday morning, I left before anyone else was awake. I met Patricia at our hotel downtown, the room I'd secretly booked for the week. We hugged for a long time in the lobby. "You ready for this?" she asked, pulling back to study my face. "I've been ready for years," I replied. "I just didn't know it." We spent the morning with Diana, signing documents and reviewing the property transfer. By noon, the process was underway. By 2 o'clock, we were sitting in the office of Bradley Reynolds, my investment manager, liquidating my portfolio. "Are you absolutely certain, Mrs. Wilson?" he asked, looking concerned as he prepared the transfer to my checking account. "This is a substantial sum to move into cash." "I'm certain," I said, thinking of that text message, feeling its sting all over again. "It's time I put this money to work." By 5 o'clock, I was $2 million richer on paper, and by Wednesday morning, I would once again be the sole owner of the house I'd worked 30 years to pay for. I didn't return to the garage apartment that night, or the next. No one called to check on me. On Wednesday morning, as Robert and Vanessa left for work and Tyler boarded his school bus, Patricia and I sat in our hotel room, waiting for Diana's call. At 9:17 a.m., my phone rang. "It's done," Diana said. "The house is yours, Margaret." I closed my eyes, feeling something between relief and resolve wash over me. "What now?" Patricia asked. "Now," I said, picking up the certified letter Diana had prepared. "We deliver the news. Before we continue, I want to invite you to join our exclusive group where you'll have access to special stories like Margaret's without any ads. You can even listen offline. Just check out the first pinned comment below. Now, let's get back to see how Robert and Vanessa will react to Margaret's big move." The certified letter sat on their doorstep like a ticking bomb. Patricia and I watched from her rental car parked across the street as the mail carrier placed it carefully against the front door. It was nearly 5 p.m. Robert would be home any minute. "You don't have to do this in person," Patricia said, squeezing my hand. "We could go back to the hotel, wait for them to call." I shook my head. "I need to see their faces. I've spent 5 years watching Vanessa's smug expressions. I want to see this one." Right on schedule, Robert's silver Audi pulled into the driveway. He was always punctual. That was my influence. Vanessa's red BMW was right behind him. They often arrived home together on Wednesdays, after Vanessa's afternoon showings and Robert's early day at the accounting firm. I watched my son step out of his car, loosen his tie, and spot the letter. He picked it up, examined it curiously, then waited for Vanessa before opening the front door. "That's our cue," I said, straightening my navy blazer, the expensive one I'd bought last year but kept hidden in the back of my closet. Today was the first time I'd worn it. Today was the first time I'd worn my diamond earrings, Richard's last gift to me in years. We crossed the street with measured steps. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I felt calmer than I had in years. I rang the doorbell of my own house. Robert answered, his face already pale. The opened letter trembled in his hand. Behind him, I could hear Vanessa's voice rising in disbelief. "This can't be legal. She can't just—" She stopped when she saw me standing in the doorway. "Hello, Robert. Vanessa," I said, my voice steady. "May we come in?" Robert stepped back wordlessly. Vanessa appeared behind him, her perfect makeup doing nothing to hide the fury in her eyes. "What is this?" she demanded, waving the letter. "Some kind of joke?" "It's a notification of property transfer," I said, stepping inside with Patricia. "The house is back in my name, legally, as of 9/17 this morning." "You can't do this," Vanessa hissed. "We've lived here for 5 years. We've made improvements. You can do this when you include a contingency clause in the original transfer." Diana's voice came from behind us. I hadn't heard her pull up, but I was glad she'd arrived as planned. "The clause Mrs. Wilson included gives her the right to reclaim the property at any time, for any reason." "You planned this all along?" Robert finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "I planned to give you a home to start your family, a place filled with love and respect. Instead, you turned it into a place where I'm not even welcome at my own grandson's birthday party." Vanessa turned to Robert. "Call your lawyer. She can't just throw us out. We have rights." "Actually," Diana said, stepping forward and placing her briefcase on the entry table, "as outlined in Section 4 of the notification, Mrs. Wilson is providing you with 60 days to vacate the premises. That's 45 days more than legally required. She's also offering to return the value of any documented improvements you've made to the property." "This is insane," Vanessa spat. "All because you weren't invited to a child's birthday party? How petty can you be?" I felt Patricia stiffen beside me, ready to defend me, but I placed a hand on her arm. "The text message was just the final straw, Vanessa. For 5 years I've watched you erase me from this family. I've slept in a garage while you redecorated the bedroom I shared with my husband for 30 years. I've been silenced at family dinners, excluded from holidays, and treated like an inconvenience rather than Tyler's grandmother and Robert's mother." I turned to my son, whose face had crumpled into something between shame and shock. "Mom, I didn't know about the text," he said. "Vanessa sent it from my phone while I was in the shower. I would never—" "But you didn't stop it either," I said quietly. "You saw I wasn't at the party. You didn't call. You didn't check on me. You let it happen, Robert, just like you've let everything else happen." The silence that followed was deafening. "You have 60 days, I said finally. "I'll be staying at a hotel until then." As we turned to leave, I paused at the door. "Oh, and Robert, tell Tyler I've kept his birthday present. He can open it when he visits me at my new address. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like this video and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and how old you are. I'd love to know who's following Margaret's journey. The first week after the revelation was eerily quiet. I expected angry phone calls, legal threats, perhaps even a tearful visit from Robert. Instead, silence. Patricia stayed with me at the hotel for 3 days before flying back to Chicago, making me promise to call her daily. "They're in shock," Diana explained when I called her, concerned about the silence. "They're consulting attorneys who are all telling them the same thing. The contract is ironclad. You've done nothing wrong legally." "And morally?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Diana's laugh was warm through the phone. "Margaret, you gave them a house, endured 5 years of disrespect, and are now giving them 60 days and offering to compensate them for improvements. Trust me, the moral high ground is firmly yours." On day 8, I received a text from Robert. "Can we talk? Alone." We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. The confident, polished accountant was gone, replaced by the uncertain boy I remembered from his first day of high school. "Vanessa's moving out," he said, after we'd gotten our coffees. "She's staying with her sister until she finds a place." I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. "She wants me to fight you on this. Her brother-in-law is a real estate attorney. He says we could drag this out for months, maybe years." He stared into his coffee. I told her I wouldn't do it. "Why not?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Because you're right." His eyes finally met mine, red-rimmed and hollow. "I let it happen. All of it. The way she treated you. The way she pushed you out. I saw it, And I did nothing. A lump formed in my throat. I hadn't expected this. Why, Robert? I kept asking myself that for years. Why would you let her treat me that way? He rubbed his face, suddenly looking much older than his 38 years. I was afraid of losing her, he admitted. After Dad died, I watched you struggle so much. I promised myself I'd never be that vulnerable. When I met Vanessa, she was so certain about everything, so in control. I thought that meant safety. He laughed bitterly. Instead, I just traded one fear for another. And now? Now I'm house hunting for a 2-bedroom apartment while my wife decides if she wants to stay married to a man who won't sue his mother. He shook his head. Tyler keeps asking when he can come home. He doesn't understand why his parents are fighting or why his grandmother isn't in the garage apartment anymore. My heart ached for my grandson. He can see me any time, Robert. You know that. I know. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. He straightened up, some resolve returning to his face. I want to bring Tyler to see you this weekend, and I'd like your advice on something else. That something else turned out to be a modest house 3 miles from mine, a small 3-bedroom ranch that needed work but had good bones. Robert had a viewing scheduled for that afternoon. It's all I can afford on my own if Vanessa and I don't reconcile, he explained. I thought, maybe you could tell me if it's worth the investment. I heard what he wasn't saying. He was trying to rebuild, starting with my approval. It was a small gesture, but significant. The house was indeed a good investment. Solid foundation, new roof, outdated kitchen. As we walked through the empty rooms, I found myself giving advice about paint colors and cabinet replacements. Tyler could have the bedroom with the bay window, I suggested. It gets wonderful morning light. Robert nodded, making notes on his phone. And would you come over sometimes? Help me make it a home? The question hung in the air between us, weighted with all the years of distance. I'd like that, I said finally. But Robert, you need to understand something. I'm not moving back into a garage apartment. Not yours, not anyone's. I'm building my own life now. What are you going to do with the house? He asked quietly. Our house. I considered my answer carefully. I haven't decided yet. But whatever I do, it won't be about punishing you or Vanessa. It will be about creating something meaningful. As we left the property, Robert's phone buzzed repeatedly. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. He declined the call. She found out I'm house hunting, he explained. She thinks it means I've given up. Have you? I asked. He looked at me with eyes so like his father's. I've given up pretending. That's different. On the drive back to my hotel, I realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, my son was seeing me. Really seeing me. Not as an obligation or an inconvenience, but as someone with wisdom to offer. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. 3 weeks after the revelation, I moved into a furnished apartment downtown while deciding what to do with the house. The place was modern and sleek, nothing like the warm, lived-in home I'd created over decades, but there was something freeing about the blank slate it offered. My phone rang as I was unpacking my 3rd box of books. Mrs. Wilson, this is Helen Martinez. I was Tyler's kindergarten teacher. I remembered her, a warm woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Of course, Mrs. Martinez. What can I do for you? Please call me Helen. I'm calling because, well, this is awkward. Tyler told me what happened with your son and daughter-in-law. The whole class heard about it during share time. I closed my eyes, imagining my grandson announcing to 25-year-olds that his grandma took her house back. Kids had no filters. I hope it didn't disrupt your class too much, I said. That's not why I'm calling. She paused. I'm also the director of the Westside Community Center. We're losing our building next month. The landlord's selling to developers. We serve over 60 seniors with meals, activities, and social services. I've been desperately searching for a new location, and Tyler mentioned you have a house you might not be using. I sat down on my half-unpacked couch. You want to use my house as a community center? Just temporarily, until we can secure new funding. We can pay a modest rent. It would be a lifeline, Mrs. Wilson. These seniors have nowhere else to go. I thought about my house sitting empty while I decided its fate. I thought about the loneliness I'd felt in that garage apartment, the isolation that had nearly broken me. Helen, I think we should meet in person to discuss this. 2 days later, I walked through my house with Helen, seeing it through new eyes. The formal dining room Robert and Vanessa never used could become a meal service area. The large living room, perfect for activities. The 4 bedrooms upstairs, offices and counseling spaces. We could start with 3 days a week, Helen explained excitedly. Our core programs are meal service, health screenings, and social activities. Most of our clients are over 70 and living alone. As she spoke, I found myself nodding. The emptiness of the house, still bearing the marks of Robert and Vanessa's hasty packing, seemed to diminish with each possibility Helen outlined. I'd like to volunteer, I heard myself say. I'm a retired nurse. I could help with the health screenings. Helen's face lit up. That would be wonderful. We're desperately short on medical volunteers. That afternoon, I called Diana to draw up a short-term lease agreement. By the following Monday, the West Side Community Center had a new temporary home, and I had a new purpose. My first day volunteering was eye-opening. The seniors who came through the doors, many using walkers or canes, weren't the frail, helpless elderly I'd somehow expected. They were vital, opinionated people with lifetimes of experience and plenty to say. Blood pressure's a bit high today, Frank, I told a barrel-chested former construction worker in his 80s. That's because Esther's wearing that blue sweater again, he winked, nodding toward an elegant woman setting up the card tables. Gets my heart racing. I laughed, a real laugh that felt rusty from disuse. During the lunch service, I found myself sitting with a group of women ranging from 65 to 92. They'd been friends for decades, meeting weekly at the center. So, you're the one who took back her house, said Mabel, the eldest, her eyes sharp behind thick glasses. Good for you. My son tried to get me to sign over my condo after my Harold died. I told him I'd haunt him if he even mentioned it again. The table erupted in knowing laughter. My daughter wanted me to move in with her family, added Gloria, a former librarian. Sounds nice until you realize they just wanted free childcare. 20 hours a week they expected. At 77? As they shared their stories, some heartbreaking, some hilarious, I realized I wasn't alone. The isolation I'd felt wasn't unique to me. These women had all faced children who saw them as either burdens or resources, rarely as individuals with their own lives to live. The secret, said Mabel, patting my hand, is to remember that you matter. Your life isn't over because your child is grown. It's just different. By the end of that first day, I had 6 dinner invitations, a book club recommendation, and an offer to join their weekly poker game, which Gloria warned me was not for the faint of heart or light of wallet. As I locked up the house that evening, my house, now serving a purpose I never could have imagined, I realized I'd found something unexpected, a community of people who saw me exactly as I was and valued me for it. I called Robert on my way home. The house is going to be a community center, I told him. At least for now. His silence told me he was processing this unexpected news. I think Dad would have approved, he finally said. For once, we were in complete agreement. The community center was thriving. In just 3 weeks, attendance had doubled as word spread through the senior community. What began as 3 days a week quickly expanded to 5, with new programs added almost daily. Chair yoga, computer classes, a memory cafe for those with early dementia and their caregivers. I was checking blood pressures in what used to be my sunroom when Helen rushed in, her face tight with concern. Margaret, there's someone from the city outside, building inspector, says we need a commercial permit to operate here. My stomach dropped. The inspector, a thin man with a clipboard and an apologetic expression, explained that a concerned citizen had reported our operation. Residential properties can't be used for commercial activities without proper zoning and permits, he said, showing me the violation notice. You'll need to cease operations until the proper paperwork is filed and approved. How long will that take? I asked. 3 to 6 months, minimum. After he left, Helen collapsed into a chair. We can't shut down for 6 months. These people depend on us. For some, this is their only hot meal of the day. I knew exactly who the concerned citizen was. That evening, I confirmed my suspicion when Robert called. Mom, did Vanessa contact the city about the house? Yes, I said. How did you know? She left her laptop open when she came to pick up more of her things. I saw the email. His voice was tight with anger. She's determined to make this as difficult as possible for you. For me? Robert, there are 60 seniors who just lost their community space. Again. This isn't about me. The line went quiet for a moment. What can I do to help? His offer surprised me. Do you know anyone in the zoning department? No, but I know who does. My firm handles the accounting for half the developers in the city. Let me make some calls. The next morning, Tyler came to visit, his first time seeing the community center. Robert had enrolled him in a day camp nearby and arranged for me to pick him up. As we walked through the front door, Tyler's eyes widened at the transformation. "Grandma, what happened to the living room?" "It's a gathering space now," I explained, showing him the circle of comfortable chairs where this morning's grief support group had met. "And where's the TV?" he asked, looking around the former entertainment room, now filled with card tables and board games. "We don't need it anymore. We talk to each other instead." He considered this, then nodded seriously. "That's better anyway. Dad says screens rot your brain." I introduced Tyler to everyone, watching with pride as he solemnly shook hands with each senior, answering their questions with the direct honesty only a 7-year-old can manage. "My mom and dad don't live together anymore," he informed Frank at the lunch table. "Dad says they're taking a pause to reassess priorities." Frank nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Sounds smart. I should have reassessed before my 3rd marriage. Would have saved me a fortune in alimony." Tyler helped serve lunch, carried water pitchers with intense concentration, and by afternoon had organized a checkers tournament between himself and 4 octogenarians who showed him no mercy. "Your grandson is something special," Helen said, watching Tyler explain his strategy to Mabel after she thoroughly trounced him. "Yes, he is," I agreed, feeling a swell of emotion. Despite everything, Robert was raising a compassionate, resilient child. That evening, as I was driving Tyler back to Robert's new apartment, he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you mad at my mom, Grandma?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Dad says she made bad choices because she was scared." "Scared of what?" Tyler looked out the window. "Of not being enough. That's what Dad said." I thought about Vanessa, her perfect appearance, her desperate climb up the social ladder, her constant redecorating and upgrading. I thought about the text message that had started all of this. Maybe there was truth in what Robert had told Tyler. Fear makes people do terrible things sometimes. "Everyone makes mistakes, Tyler," I said carefully. "What matters is what we do after we realize our mistakes." When I dropped him off, Robert was waiting at the door of his new apartment. It was sparsely furnished, but already had Tyler's artwork on the walls and plants in the windows. "The zoning board called," Robert said after Tyler went inside. "They're expediting our case. Should have an answer by Friday." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. "Your help means a lot." He nodded, hesitating before adding, "Vanessa wants to talk to you." My body tensed involuntarily. "About what?" She wouldn't say, just that it's important. He ran a hand through his hair. "A nervous habit since childhood. She's not contesting the divorce anymore. Signed the papers yesterday." The news surprised me. I'd assumed Vanessa would fight to the bitter end. "I'll think about it," I said, not committing either way. 3 days later, the zoning board granted us a temporary permit, not a permanent solution, but enough to keep the center open while we pursued proper channels. Helen cried when I told her the news. So did many of our seniors. That afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Wilson, it's Vanessa. Please meet me tomorrow at Riverfront Park, 11 a.m. I need to explain something. Come alone." I showed the message to Diana that evening. "It could be a trap," she warned. "She might be planning to record you saying something she can use against you. Or she might genuinely want to talk," I countered. "Either way, I'm tired of being afraid of her." "Then go," Diana said. "But remember who you are now. You're not the woman in the garage apartment anymore." As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about Tyler's words. Fear of not being enough. Wasn't that what had driven me all these years too? Fear of losing my son's love, fear of being alone, fear of standing up for myself. Tomorrow, I would face Vanessa, and whatever she had planned, I would face it as the woman I had become, not the woman I had been forced to be. If you're enjoying Margaret's journey so far, please hit that subscribe button and share this story with someone who might need to hear it. There's still so much more to come. Riverfront Park was busy for a weekday morning. Mothers with strollers, retirees walking dogs, office workers taking early lunch breaks on benches overlooking the water. I spotted Vanessa immediately, sitting alone at a picnic table near the fountain. She looked different. The perfect makeup was gone, replaced by a bare face that revealed dark circles under her eyes. Her designer clothes had been traded for jeans and a simple blouse. Her hair, usually blown out to glossy perfection, was pulled back in a ponytail. As I approached, she looked up, tension visible in her shoulders. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Thank you for coming," she finally said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. I sat across from her, keeping the table between us. "Robert said you signed the divorce papers." She nodded, looking down at her hands. The massive diamond engagement ring was gone. "I'm staying with my sister in Lexington. I've accepted a position with her husband's real estate firm." She spoke mechanically, as if reading from a script. "I'll be moving at the end of the month." "That's not why you asked me here," I said. Vanessa took a deep breath. "No, I asked you here because I owe you an explanation. Not an excuse, there isn't one, but you deserve to know why." I waited, studying this unfamiliar version of my former daughter-in-law. "My mother was a housekeeper," she began, her voice barely audible above the fountain splash. "She cleaned other people's homes 6 days a week, beautiful homes with beautiful things that were never hers. She died still cleaning other people's toilets at 72. I hadn't known this. Robert had mentioned once that Vanessa rarely spoke of her family. I promised myself I would never end up like her. I would have the beautiful home, the beautiful things. I would be the one others envied." She laughed bitterly. "I worked so hard to create this perfect life, this perfect image, and then you were there, watching me, judging me. I never judged you, Vanessa. You didn't have to say anything. Just having you there, seeing how Robert looked to you for approval, how Tyler adored you." She shook her head. "I was terrified you'd show him who I really was. The housekeeper's daughter playing dress-up in a life she didn't deserve. The vulnerability in her confession caught me off guard. I had spent years seeing Vanessa as a one-dimensional villain, never considering she might be fighting her own demons." "The text message," I said. "The birthday party." She closed her eyes briefly. "I was showing the house on Maple Street to clients. A perfect family with perfect children. The wife asked if we'd be bringing Tyler to their neighborhood pool. I heard myself lying, saying we belonged to the country club instead." She looked up at me. I was so deep in the lie, I couldn't bear to have anyone at the party who knew the truth, especially you. "The truth about what? That you didn't belong to a country club? That I'm a fraud?" Her voice cracked. "That no matter how many houses I sell, how perfect my clothes are, how many times I redecorate, I'm still that scared little girl watching her mother come home with other people's dirt under her fingernails." I thought about my own mother, who had cleaned houses too, who had taught me to value education and independence above material things, who would have been horrified by the way I'd allowed myself to be diminished. "My mother was a housekeeper too," I said quietly. Vanessa's head snapped up, surprise evident in her eyes. "She cleaned houses so I could be the first in our family to go to college. She wore the same dress to church for 15 years so I could have nursing books. There's no shame in honest work, Vanessa. The shame is in forgetting where you came from." Tears filled her eyes. I wanted to forget. I thought if I could just keep climbing higher, keep acquiring more, I could outrun it. She wiped her cheeks. Instead, I lost everything that actually mattered. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of her confession hanging between us. "I didn't come here for forgiveness," she finally said. "I know what I did was unforgivable. I came because you deserve the truth, and because—" she reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "Because I want to make one thing right, at least." Inside the envelope was a check for $75,000, made out to the West Side Community Center. "It's from the sale of my car," she explained. "I thought maybe it could help with the permits, or renovations, or whatever you need to make the center permanent." I stared at the check, then at Vanessa. "Why? Tyler told me about the seniors you help, about the meals and the health screenings. He said it made his grandma happy to help people who didn't have anyone else." Her voice softened. "I know what that's like, to not have anyone else." I thought about turning down the money, about telling her she couldn't buy absolution. But this wasn't about Vanessa or me anymore. It was about the 60 seniors who now had a place to belong. "Thank you," I said, carefully placing the check back in the envelope. "This will make a difference for a lot of people." She nodded, standing to leave. "I'm moving next week. I'd like to say goodbye to Tyler before I go, if that's okay. Robert said you have him on Thursdays now. He's your son, Vanessa. That doesn't change because you and Robert are divorcing. He was never really mine, though, was he?" she said softly. "He's all Wilson, your grandson through and through." As she turned to walk away, I found myself calling after her. "Vanessa." She paused, looking back. "We all start somewhere. What matters is where we choose to go next." She held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded once before continuing down the path. I watched her disappear around the bend, feeling strangely hollow. I had spent years casting Vanessa as the villain in my story. Now I realized she had been playing a role of her own creation, driven by fears I had never suspected. I pulled out my phone and called Helen. "I think I just found our funding for the permanent zoning permit," I said. "And maybe something more." "More?" Helen asked. I looked out over the river, watching its steady flow toward new horizons. "Yes," I said. "A new beginning." If you're enjoying this story of redemption and second chances, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to start again. Don't forget to like this video too. The Wilson Community Center became official 3 months later. With Vanessa's donation and additional grants Helen secured, we purchased the property outright from myself and established a proper nonprofit organization. The formal dining room became a cafeteria, serving over 100 meals daily. The master bedroom transformed into a medical clinic where I volunteered 3 days a week alongside 2 other retired nurses. "Mrs. Wilson, your blood pressure is excellent today," I told Mabel during her weekly checkup. "That's because Frank finally asked me to the fall dance," she winked. "Only took him 40 years. At 71, I found myself busier than I'd been since my nursing days. The center consumed most of my time, but in the best possible way. I had purpose again. I had community. Most importantly, I had myself back, the capable, compassionate woman who had somehow gotten lost in the shadows of that garage apartment. One Tuesday morning, as I was inventorying medical supplies, Helen knocked on the clinic door. "There's someone here to see you," she said with an odd expression. "He's waiting in your office." I expected Robert or perhaps Diana with paperwork. Instead, I found a distinguished-looking man in his early 70s standing by the window, examining the framed mission statement we'd hung last week. "Can I help you?" I asked. He turned, and I was struck by his kind eyes and warm smile. "Margaret Wilson? I'm Dr. James Barrett. I was hoping to speak with you about your clinic services." Dr. Barrett, as it turned out, was a retired cardiologist looking to volunteer. He'd heard about our center from a colleague at the hospital where I'd once worked. "We desperately need medical volunteers," I admitted, offering him coffee, "especially someone with your expertise." We talked for over an hour, his enthusiasm for our mission matching my own. By the time he left, we'd arranged for him to start the following week, running a heart health clinic every Wednesday. "This is exactly what I've been looking for," he said as I walked him to the door. "A way to use my skills that really matters." "That's what we all want, isn't it?" I replied. "To matter." He held my gaze a moment longer than necessary. "I look forward to working with you, Margaret." That evening, I had dinner with Robert and Tyler at their apartment. In the 3 months since the divorce, Robert had transformed the modest house into a real home. Children's books filled the shelves, science projects occupied the kitchen table, and Tyler's artwork covered the refrigerator. "Dad says I can have a sleepover for my birthday," Tyler announced as we ate the lasagna I'd brought. "Can we have it at the center? Frank said he'd teach us poker." Robert nearly choked on his water. "I think your friend's parents might have questions about that, buddy." "Actually," I said, "we're planning a grandparent-grandchild day next month. Games, crafts, storytelling. Your friends could bring their grandparents." Tyler's eyes lit up. "Could we have cake? What's a party without cake?" I laughed. After Tyler went to bed, Robert and I sat on his small patio, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. "Mom, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about," he said, his voice serious. "I'm seeing someone." This was unexpected. "Oh?" "She's a kindergarten teacher at Tyler's school. We met at a parent-teacher conference last month." He looked almost shy. "Her name is Deborah. She's different from Vanessa. Grounded, kind." "You seem happy," I observed. "I am. For the first time in a long time." He hesitated. "She'd like to meet you. I told her all about you in the center." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it. "There's something else," he continued. "I've been thinking about the future, about what kind of example I want to set for Tyler." He took a deep breath. "I'm going back to school. Part-time, evenings, for social work." Pride welled up inside me. "Social work? That's a big change from accounting. I want to help people who've been through what we went through. Family mediation, elder advocacy." He looked at me directly. "You showed me it's never too late to start over, to become the person you were meant to be." I reached over and squeezed his hand, too moved to speak immediately. "When Dad died," he continued, I was so afraid of failing, of not measuring up. I took the safe route with everything: career, marriage, even being a son. I let fear make my choices. He shook his head. I don't want Tyler to learn that from me. He won't, I assured him. He's learning something much more valuable now. As I drove home that night, I thought about second chances, about how losing everything had somehow given all of us, an opportunity to rebuild on stronger foundations. The next morning, I arrived at the center early to prepare for our weekly health clinic. To my surprise, Dr. Barrett James was already there, setting up equipment. "You're not scheduled until tomorrow," I said, helping him arrange blood pressure cuffs. "I had some free time," he smiled, "and I wanted to ask you something." My heart gave an unexpected flutter. At 71, I'd long ago resigned myself to being alone. Richard had been gone 15 years. Dating was something other people did, younger people. "The symphony is performing Dvořák this weekend," James said. "I have an extra ticket. I thought you might enjoy it." I found myself stammering like a schoolgirl. That would be lovely. Thank you." His smile deepened the creases around his eyes. "Excellent. Perhaps dinner beforehand?" As our seniors began arriving for their appointments, I caught Helen watching me with a knowing look. "You're blushing," she whispered as we passed in the hallway. "Don't be ridiculous," I replied, feeling my cheeks grow warmer. That afternoon, I received a text from Vanessa, the first since our meeting at the park 3 months ago. "Saw the article about the Wilson Community Center in the Herald. Congratulations. You've created something beautiful from all the broken pieces." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Finally, I typed, "Sometimes broken pieces create the most interesting mosaics. I hope you're finding your way." Her reply came quickly. "One day at a time. Thank you for the second chance." As I closed my phone, I gazed around at what had once been my living room, now filled with seniors playing cards, reading together, sharing their lives. I thought about James and his symphony invitation, about Robert finding a new path, about Tyler growing up seeing the power of resilience and reinvention. One text message had changed everything. One moment of cruelty had set in motion a journey I never could have imagined. By trying to exclude me, Vanessa had inadvertently pushed me toward a life more inclusive, more meaningful than I'd ever dreamed possible. Sometimes, the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most painful packages. 6 months after the Wilson Community Center opened its doors, we celebrated with a gala fundraiser. The house, my former home, was transformed for the evening with twinkling lights and flowers. Over 200 people gathered to support what had become a vital community resource. I stood near the entrance, greeting guests in a navy blue dress I'd splurged on for the occasion, with my mother's pearls around my neck. James stood beside me, handsome in his dark suit, his hand occasionally finding the small of my back in a gesture that still gave me butterflies. "Mrs. Wilson!" called a familiar voice. I turned to see Elaine, my former neighbor, approaching with her husband. "The place looks amazing. I've been telling everyone at church about what you've done here." Before I could respond, I spotted Robert arriving with a petite woman with a bright smile and natural warmth, Deborah, the kindergarten teacher. Tyler ran ahead of them, making a beeline for me. "Grandma, we brought cookies for the party," he announced, presenting a container proudly. I helped make them. "They look delicious, sweetheart," I said, bending to hug him. "Is Frank here?" he asked, looking around eagerly. "He promised to show me a new card trick." "He's in the game room with Mabel and the others," I laughed. "But introduce yourself to everyone first. Remember your manners." As Tyler dashed off, Robert stepped forward with Deborah. The introduction was easy, natural. She asked thoughtful questions about the center, mentioned books she thought our seniors might enjoy, offered to lead a reading group. I liked her immediately. "Mom, this place is incredible," Robert said, looking around at what had once been our family home. "Dad would be so proud." The comment touched me deeply. I think he would be. As the evening progressed, I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and donations, introducing James to everyone as our volunteer cardiologist, even though he had become much more than that to me in recent months. Helen clinked a glass for attention and invited me to the makeshift stage, once my living room, for a speech. Standing before the crowd, I saw faces that had become dear to me. Our seniors, volunteers, community supporters, and my family, both blood and chosen. 6 months ago, this was just a house, I began. A structure with walls and floors and memories. Today, it's a home again. Not for one family, but for hundreds of people who come through these doors seeking connection, purpose, and community. I paused, looking at Tyler sitting cross-legged on the floor, watching me with shining eyes. Someone once tried to exclude me from my grandson's birthday party, I continued. It was painful at the time, but now I see it was actually a gift, one that pushed me to create something larger than myself, something that could welcome everyone who has ever felt excluded or forgotten. From the back of the room, a movement caught my eye. A familiar figure stood in the doorway, hesitant and uncertain. Vanessa. She looked different from when I'd last seen her, healthier, more at peace. Her eyes met mine across the crowded room, a question in them. I gave her a slight nod, and relief washed over her face as she stepped inside. We all face moments that can either break us or remake us, I continued. The Wilson Community Center exists because of one such moment in my life, but it thrives because of all of you who chose to believe in second chances, new beginnings, and the power of community. After the speech, as guests mingled and the string quartet played, I made my way to where Vanessa stood awkwardly near the refreshment table. I wasn't sure if I should come, she said quietly. Robert said it would be okay, but I wanted to be certain. You contributed to making this happen, I reminded her. You have every right to be here. She nodded, glancing around. It's beautiful, what you've created. So much more meaningful than what it was before. Before we could continue, Tyler spotted her from across the room. Mom! He shouted, running toward her. Though the divorce had been finalized months ago, he still called her Mom, a testament to Robert's generosity in fostering that relationship despite everything. Vanessa knelt to embrace him, her composure cracking as she held him tight. Over Tyler's shoulder, her eyes met mine, filled with gratitude. Later, as the party wound down, I found myself standing in what had once been my bedroom, now the center's clinic. James joined me, 2 champagne glasses in hand. To new beginnings, he toasted, clinking his glass against mine. And full circles, I added. He studied me thoughtfully. Seeing Vanessa tonight, was that difficult? I considered the question. Strangely, no. The anger is gone. She was as much a prisoner of her fears as I was of mine. That's what I admire about you, Margaret, he said, taking my hand. Your capacity for growth, for seeing beyond the surface of things. Our relationship had developed slowly, deliberately over the past months. At our age, romance was different, more measured, perhaps, but also more honest. We had both lived enough to know what mattered. I have something to ask you, he said, suddenly serious. I've been offered a position leading a medical mission to Guatemala for 3 months next spring. They need someone to coordinate healthcare for rural communities. My heart sank a little. 3 months was a long separation for our new relationship. That sounds like an amazing opportunity, I said, meaning it despite my disappointment. I'd like you to consider coming with me, he continued. They need nurses too, especially ones with administrative experience. We could do this together. I blinked in surprise. Leave the center for 3 months? I couldn't possibly. Helen is more than capable of running things, he pointed out. And Robert mentioned he'd like to get more involved. Maybe this is a chance to see what you've built can stand, without you constantly holding it up. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. Before the text message that changed everything, I never would have considered such an adventure. My world had been so small, so confined to serving others' needs. I'll think about it, I promised. As the last guests departed, I found myself alone with Robert in the kitchen, now a professional facility that fed dozens daily. We worked together, cleaning up the last of the party dishes in comfortable silence. Vanessa's taking a position with Habitat for Humanity, he said suddenly. Building homes for families in need. I smiled at the symmetry. That suits her. She always did have an eye for houses. She asked if Tyler could visit her project sites sometimes. I think it would be good for him to see that side of her. He placed a stack of clean plates in the cabinet. She's trying, Mom. Really trying to be better. I know, I said, thinking of the donation, the text message, her appearance tonight. We're all trying. He hesitated, then asked, would it be weird if she volunteered here sometimes? When she's in town visiting Tyler? She asked if that would be possible. A year ago, the idea would have been unthinkable. Now, it felt like the closing of a circle. Not weird, I decided. Healing, maybe. As we finished cleaning, Robert looked around the transformed space with a wistful expression. You know, I was angry at first when you took the house back. I felt like you were punishing me for something that was Vanessa's doing. He leaned against the counter. But now I see you weren't taking something away. You were creating something greater. I touched his arm gently. Sometimes we have to lose what we thought we wanted to find what we truly need. Later that night, as James drove me home to my apartment, I told him about the conversation with Robert, about Vanessa's transformation, about the possibility of Guatemala. Life never stopped surprising me, I admitted. At 71, I thought I knew exactly how my story would end. Quiet, small, in the background of everyone else's lives. Now I can't even imagine what tomorrow might bring. He reached across the console to take my hand. That's what makes it an adventure worth having. As we pulled up to my building, he turned to me with the boyish smile that had captivated me from our first meeting. So, Margaret Wilson, what do you say? Shall we have an adventure together? Under the soft glow of the streetlights, I felt younger than I had in decades. Not because time had reversed, but because I had finally stepped fully into who I was meant to be. Yes, I said, squeezing his hand. I believe we shall. 1 year to the day after I received that devastating text message, I stood on the tarmac of a small airstrip in Guatemala, watching as our medical supplies were unloaded from the cargo plane. James directed volunteers while I checked inventory against my clipboard, the tropical heat a stark contrast to the Portland spring we'd left behind 3 weeks ago. Margaret, come look at this, James called, waving me over to where he stood with a local doctor. They were reviewing the mobile clinic schedule. 12 villages in 10 weeks, bringing healthcare to people who otherwise might never see a doctor. At 72, I was having the adventure of a lifetime. My nursing skills, rusty in some areas but rock solid in others, were desperately needed here. Each day brought new challenges, new faces, new opportunities to make a difference. I'd never felt more alive. That evening, as we sat outside our modest quarters under a star-filled sky that made Portland's night seem empty by comparison, I checked my messages on the satellite phone. A photo from Robert showed Tyler proudly holding up a volunteer certificate from the Wilson Community Center. Tyler organized a book drive for the seniors, Robert had written. His whole class participated. Helen says they collected over 300 books. Another message, this one from Helen. Center running smoothly. Board-approved expansion into the property next door. Deborah's reading program has 30 seniors enrolled. Frank asked about your return date. Claims no one takes his blood pressure properly but you. I smiled, showing the messages to James. They don't need me there. They'll always need you, he corrected. But they've learned to fly on their own. That's what good leaders do. Create systems that thrive even in their absence. The last message was unexpected, from Vanessa. Completed my first habitat house today. Handing the keys to the family made me think of you. Thank you for showing me there's more to life than acquiring things. Hope Guatemala is amazing. Tyler misses you. I stared at the message, marveling at how completely our lives had transformed in a single year. The woman who had once sent me that cruel text was now building homes for others. My son, who had stood silently by, was finding his voice as an advocate. My grandson was learning the joy of service, and I had found not just purpose, but partnership and passion in a chapter of life I'd assumed would be defined by loss and limitation. Penny for your thoughts, James said, bringing me a cup of tea. I was just thinking about dominoes, I replied, how one small push sets everything in motion. He nodded, understanding. Your text message. If Vanessa hadn't sent it, I'd still be living in that garage apartment, making blueberry pancakes and being invisible. I doubt that, James said, taking my hand. People like you don't stay invisible forever. Your light is too bright. The next morning, as we treated patients in a village so remote it wasn't on any map, I found myself teaching basic wound care to a local woman who would become the community's healthcare provider after we left. Her eager intelligence reminded me of myself as a young nurse, absorbing everything my mentors shared. You will return next year? She asked hopefully. Perhaps, I smiled. Or perhaps I'll send others who can teach you even more. That evening, I called Robert, eager to hear his voice despite the expense and poor connection. How's Tyler? I asked immediately. Missing his world-traveling grandmother, Robert laughed. He tells everyone his grandma is saving lives in the jungle. Hardly a jungle, I corrected. But we are making a difference here. Mom, Robert's voice turned serious. I need to tell you something. I've met with a lawyer about creating a foundation, The Margaret Wilson Elder Care Initiative. We want to replicate what you've done with the center in other communities. I sat down, overwhelmed. Robert, It was Vanessa's idea, actually, he continued. She's working with the lawyer pro bono to set it up. She says it's her way of making amends, though we're well beyond that now. Tears filled my eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll be the honorary chairperson, that you'll help us get it started when you return. Of course, I managed. I'd be honored. After we hung up, I walked to the edge of our camp, looking out over the mountains as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. James joined me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders against the evening chill. Good news from home? He asked. I told him about the foundation, about Vanessa's involvement, about how something that began with such pain had blossomed into something beautiful that would continue to grow and touch lives. You know what amazes me most? I said, leaning against his steady shoulder. A year ago, I thought my life was essentially over. I was just waiting out my days, trying not to be a burden, making myself as small as possible. And now? He prompted. Now I know the truth, I smiled. Life doesn't diminish with age, it expands. There are no endings, only new beginnings if we're brave enough to claim them. As darkness fell, we walked back to camp hand in hand, guided by the light of stars older than civilization yet still burning bright. Like me, I thought. Old, yes, but with fire still burning, purpose still driving me forward, love still opening my heart to new possibilities. One text message had tried to exclude me from a child's birthday party. Instead, it had invited me to the celebration of a lifetime, my own. A single moment of cruelty had ultimately led to countless acts of kindness, to a legacy that would outlive me, to a love I never expected to find. I had lost a house, but found a home, in service, in community, in my own rediscovered strength. The garage apartment was gone. Margaret Wilson, nurse, mother, grandmother, leader, lover, friend, had fully arrived. And what a magnificent journey it had been. Before I end my story, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for following along. If this journey has touched you in any way, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and share this story with someone who might need to be reminded that it's never too late to reclaim your life. Remember, sometimes the things meant to break us become the very things that remake us into something stronger and more beautiful than before.